While it may seem pedantic trying to dissect differences between a beautiful and, well, a sexy face, there are actually some subtle differences that make this a valid discussion. People often point to a face they consider sexy, and that face tends to look different from a face that people laud as being beautiful. The difference is actually in the wording. Calling somebody sexy or hot has a lustful connotation behind it. It signifies sexual attraction. A sexy face often appears seductive or sultry. On the other hand, a beautiful person captures facial proportions and features that can be admired without appearing seductive. If we take a painting by Van Gogh, most people will recognize it as beautiful simply due to its artistic nature. The luster of the colors pop, and every fine brushstroke is a testament to that artist's creative power. You could stare at that painting for hours, noticing all the fine details, but a beautiful human, in a similar way, can be likened to a painting. It follows tenets of artistic design that we all tend to like. Most of us can recognize and admire a beautiful face. After all, according to Gallup and Frederick, beauty is largely objective. There is little cross-cultural disagreement on what makes a beautiful face. Our evolutionary history drives that consistency. A beautiful person does not necessarily have to look perfect though. Arguably, subtle imperfections can add to the uniqueness and beauty of a face, and that is where the subjectivity of beauty comes into play. So it is a mix of both objective and subjective standards. No amount of staring at a beautiful face would elicit the same sexual draw that staring at a sexy face does. However, there is some overlap between the two terms. A sexy face can of course be considered beautiful to some extent, and the opposite can also hold true. Still though, a face that is considered sexually attractive will display different facial features on average. So let's try to do a deeper dive into what separates somebody from looking hot compared to looking beautiful. When we talk about a face being sexually attractive, we are alluding to physical attraction and more so sex appeal. There is a hardwired biological component to sexual attraction that intends to reproduce with a healthy mate. A large proportion of appearing like a healthy mate is sexual dimorphism. Having characteristics that express the prototypically masculine or feminine face can cue into sexual maturity and reproductive capability. In men, this could be having facial hair, a strong jaw, a prominent brow ridge, a larger nose. Thus, a sexy male face would have an intermediate amount of facial hair to not cover up the robustness of the jaw. A sexy female face would have upturned eyebrows, smaller nose, fuller lips, longer hair. And of course, there are bodily features as well for both of the sexes, but that's outside the scope of the discussion. An androgynous face could be considered beautiful, but may lack a high degree of sex appeal. A simple test to discern whether a face is hot or beautiful is to see how people describe it. If people describe it in R-rated ways and point to sexual desirability, then it is likely more of the sexual face with high dimorphism. These compliments are often less refined, and there is a little mention of desirable personality traits. Personality is often an afterthought for a sexy face. However, a beautiful face may elicit compliments outside of their looks. They may be related to the looks themselves, but it could also be something like your eyes have a warm and kind appearance, but that has nothing to do with the face itself. What does kind eyes even mean? Think about it. Moreover, this becomes apparent for any attractive actor, athlete, musician, actress, and so be it. The actor will be complimented on their personality and acting skills along with their beauty. In fact, for the cases of actors like Michael B. Jordan, his on-screen persona boosts his perceived beauty. Research by Little and colleagues note what is good is beautiful, a common stereotype that they're trying to discover, and male and female participants in their study were asked to create composite faces of their desired partner's personality. What they found in that study was that the attractiveness of the composite faces depends on the person's personality trait preferences. For example, women appear to demand partners that look sexy, assertive, mature, relaxed, and warm. Men did not discriminate as much, but appearing easygoing, assertive, warm, and sexy were significant in a female partner. What somebody considers beautiful can depend on the traits they value in a partner, and sexiness was just one of those variable traits. However, it is noteworthy that both men and women seem to value sexiness or sexual desirability when it comes to trait preferences, so there is an overlap. The important takeaway is that a face can be beautiful without being the most sexy. If that person prefers an assertive and easygoing face, then what would be beautiful to them is different. Sexiness seems to be its own dimension and is not completely synonymous with attractiveness or beauty. Chris Evans was recently named the sexiest man alive, but we can even increase his sex appeal through subtle changes in skin tone, eyebrow color, and facial shapes. Even the head position makes a difference, as we'll see later. That does not necessarily mean he is more beautiful to everyone. Some of his other traits like perceived kindness may diminish at the cost of increased sex appeal. Another prominent example is Michael B. Jordan, who doesn't have the most harmonious face, as we've covered in our analysis previously, but he has high sex appeal because of his on-screen persona as a muscle-bound athlete in Creed, for example. A common trend among sexy faces is that they tend to look more fierce. The previous study by Little and colleagues seems to emphasize assertiveness and sexiness as the most significant traits, and the two may actually be inseparable, but more research should be done to conclusively say that. A beautiful face could be described as kind, approachable, likable, elegant even, sophisticated. A sexy face is often described as hot, fierce, robust, striking, assertive, memorable. So what makes a face appear fierce? In numerous past videos, we've described the various facial proportions like the facial width to height ratio that cue into perceptions of dominance. In other words, having a wide and short face tends to make a face look more aggressive, much like the headlights of a Bugatti. However, there are other features that make a face appear fierce. Angularity and robustness is actually a big one. This applies to the angularity of the jaw, the cheekbones, eyes, and eyebrows. Any objects that are angular are perceived as more capable and dominant than rounded ones, per research by Berry and MacArthur. Sexy faces tend to have more angular and sharp eyebrows. This gives a striking appearance and a rounded brow shape. We can make a male face less sexy in Photoshop through changes in facial angularity and dimorphism. We'll also touch on the eyebrows in just a second, but all of these changes give someone like Ian Somerhalder a less sexy appearance, and this would surely affect his typecasting and how he is perceived, as not a handsome vampire but more just an average Joe. It's not enough to make him unattractive, but the changes do detract from his specific niche of sexual appeal. Research by Vaca et al. Investigated the effect of sagittal head position, so how much the head is tilted down or back, on the attractiveness of the eye region. First, it was noted that by tilting the head down by 15 degrees, the eyes appear more upturned and angular. And you can test this in front of the mirror yourself. Just tilt your head down and look at yourself, look into your eyes, and you'll notice that your face does look more intimidating, much like you're ready to fight. So not only does a negative sagittal head position increase the pleasantness of the under eye region, by pleasant we mean attractiveness by making it look more aggressive, strong, dominant, but it also accentuates the angularity of the eyes. This is why models typically tilt their head down slightly, if you've ever noticed, and it's a more dominant, aesthetically pleasing and seductive posture. If you want to appear sexier, that is one way. Don't overdo it, please. The color and contrast of the eyebrows also tie into sexual dimorphism. Thus, they affect how sexy a face appears. A paper by Jones et al. Discusses the various facial contrasts that affect how sexually dimorphic and attractive a face appears. Of particular note was the difference in brow contrast between men and women. More eyebrow contrast is a masculinizing trait. This takes the form of dark and dense eyebrows, and this is why glasses with dark rims can often appear sexy, especially on people with lighter complexions. Conversely, thinner and lighter brows with less contrast are less sexually dimorphic for women. However, less brow contrast is also typical in older faces, so it's a sign of aging as well. Looking old is usually not considered sexy, so there is a trade-off between youth and femininity when it comes to female eyebrows. Traits like vigor and energy are also associated with usefulness, and so darker and more contrasted eyebrows seems to benefit both men and women. This is why a sexy face usually has dark eyebrows and more contrast around their eyes. Virtually any example you can take has pretty thick, strong eyebrows. The effect of contrast on attractiveness and dimorphism was not as profound in the mouth or other areas of the face. This is why makeup is mostly around the eyes, because they have a great influence in how sexy a face appears, perhaps even the greatest influence. It's why making the brows and lashes darker with makeup tends to make a face appear more vigorous and youthful. We can make a face that is predominantly beautiful into a sexier face through subtle changes in facial angularity, but mainly through increased contrast in the lashes and the brows. So to sum up, there are subtle differences between a sexy face and a beautiful face. I think we can all come to agree. A sexy face typically possesses more markers of facial dimorphism, more masculinized or more feminized characteristics, typically tending towards the more masculine characteristics in the West, where we want sharper features on both men and women, and more feminized characteristics in the East, where even the men have softer, more pretty boy features, but nonetheless, they're just two sides of the same coin. Also, someone who looks sexy usually looks fierce. Their faces are more angular and they tend to have darker eyebrows and higher contrast around the eyes. Appearing sexy seems to be its own subcategory among the many traits that people look for in a face. just like with any other sexual appeal, like for the body shape, your bodily features, your height. While it is important, other traits like appearing easygoing also do matter from the studies we looked at, and in short, sexual desirability succinctly captures what makes a sexy face. Think short-term attractiveness. We typically tend to look for sexier partners. Long-term partners, we tend to look for more beautiful partners. A beautiful face can be likened to a painting. It expresses just the right traits that the viewer looks for, while also not straying away from the consensus of what makes a prototypical attractive face. If you'd like to get your face assessed with a cephalometric analysis and learn more about your facial features from our team of doctors and dentists, head over to the QOVES website for an assessment. As always, that's over at the QOVES website, and I'll catch you in the next one.